Hello, this is Jensen. You might also know me as the best mid lane LCS, or at the very least you will soon enough, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Reflections, and I'm here with Jankos, who is actually a return guest, but don't get too excited when I say that though. We did the first one, I think, like just over a year and a bit into your LEC/EU LCS career, so it's a long time ago. And if you don't really like really old school League of Legends, it's not that interesting. Like, we don't know any of the things in that interview about like Season 6 Worlds and all the other things. So none of the championships are in there. That's what's going to all be in this interview here. So it's where we're going to get into. So yeah, because where I actually want to start was this. I actually was noticing when I did look up a bunch of the old stuff, one detail I want to ask you about is this, right? People will know that I wouldn't even say it was a scandal or drama, but there was a minor sort of like weird thing happened this year in LEC where Rekkles came back to the LEC, and obviously he's like he is the poster boy. We all know that, and everyone loves to. He's like loads of fans. He's always been on Fnatic, so everyone loves to hype him up. And they portrayed him as, you know, the king of LEC. He came back in, even though he didn't play that great. You know, he had probably one of his worst years. Meanwhile, you even said yourself that they were sort of treating you, because you'd gone to a smaller team, like you were just a bomb and washed up. But it's worse than that, dude, because when I looked back, I actually forgot this myself. Because Rekkles had to sit out the first year of EU LCS because he was underage, you guys actually have like parallel careers, that you're actually the only ones pretty much left, mate. Like, you were both in the challenger scene in 2013. You were even playing him in like LAN tournaments like DreamHack and stuff. Then in 2014, you both came into the LEC and were in top teams. Like, yours was a bit worse than his. You've both lasted. I mean, you had the 1 year when he was off in EU Masters, but aside from that, you've both been in LEC pretty much the whole time. You basically played a million times. You've been competing. You've both got championships. In some ways, I know it's not the role, but you actually are sort of two of the only ones left from the old school. Shouldn't you be the rivals in a way? Shouldn't you be the two that are people talking about?
We played together as well, right? So
that's true.
Rivals. I guess we rivaled when I think the biggest rivalry we had was between 2018 maybe and 19 and 20, when Fnatic and G2 were kind of like very good teams in Europe, and yes. I was in the one of them, he was in the other one of them. But then I think 2021 showed that like we didn't, our team didn't work out right in G2, right? We didn't even make it to Worlds. We were top 4, top 5 scene by the end of Summer Split, which was a pretty big disaster. Then I think he was in EU Masters. I was playing in G2. We won one split. We played second the other. And now I'm in Heretics. He was in Fnatic. And both of us kind of crumbled as I think I was 8th and 9th. And he was 9th and 8th, was it? So we kind of just like swapped places. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very interesting topic because both of us played for ages. I feel like, according to what you mentioned about the King and the Boomer, I think that's just like it just is this way now at this point.
Oh, you just accepted it. Okay.
I accepted it because I enjoy these memes. I enjoy being, meme for my peers. I enjoy being meme for being such a veteran player, for playing a long time. And I still think people do actually appreciate me, and I still think people think I'm good. But of course, I would say 95% of my streaming as well that I've been doing for God knows how many years now. I think probably like 8 years. I also meme a lot, I joke a lot, so I feel like it's quite normal. I also don't have hard feelings for LEC for calling me a boomer. I think that it was a good joke. Of course, it's more like painful for some of the fans now that I'm playing in Heretics because we don't do as well. Sure. If I'm in G2 and we are winning, of course, or any other team and we are winning, everyone would be like, haha, this old boomer is like, yes, old and he's still playing. But now that I'm in Heretics and we are not doing as well, then when people meme me, oh no, he should still be appreciated. He's still good at the game. So I feel like the difference is only how good you are at the game, and people wouldn't actually mind it. But for Rekkles as well, right? I mean, they were miming him, or they were trying to appreciate him, that the King is back in LEC, that after a year break he's back, which makes sense. He wasn't really there for a year. He was in EU Masters, and I'm sure that if I were to retire, or not retire, but if I were to go to EU Masters and then come back, they would probably make a segment about me coming back as well. Okay. So I think that makes sense, right? I mean, it's just like LEC has to build narratives, or LEC has to build content. They need ideas. They need to do stuff, and I feel like Rekkles' branding is very good. I feel like he is appreciated by all fans. I feel like he is one of the LEC OG stars that started so long time ago. So I think all of it makes sense. And that being said, now he really loves to support. And I think he's out of Fnatic. I'm not sure where is he gonna go now, if he's staying in LAC or going to America or just, going to like IU Master Team. But I'm very curious myself, very interesting for such a veteran player to swap roles as well. I think that he played support he played support on and off in solo queue. Yes. So maybe it's a good transition to him. I mean, good luck to him, right? I respect him. I think he's a good player. Of course, we didn't work out together, but I think he can still do well, right? And besides, I also feel like this is a completely different topic, but I also feel like the league itself needs like popularity to stay on top.
You need stars, of course.
Yeah. So people like him are very needed, right? It's the same as, for example, in Brazil in CBLOL, the League of Legends is so big in Brazil. That's very good for us. League of Legends being smaller and smaller in America. In North America, is not good for us, right? Because I mean, this is where a lot of decisions are made. This is where kind of it all started. So League dying there is not good for us. League being popular in CBLOL or China or Korea is good for us. So people like Rekkles, they should be welcome, right? Wherever they choose to stay in LAC or they move on to EU Masters, I think they are very welcome to stick around, because I'm sure that if Rekkles would retire, to a similar impact is the same thing as if Faker would retire. Maybe not the same, right? Because Faker is much bigger
for the brand
player.
Yeah,
for the brand, right?
Yeah.
For the brand, it is still big, right? If he retires, many people will stop following because they follow because of Rekkles. They follow Rekkles. They want to see him doing well. So I feel like a lot of these brands, these like old veteran players, still bring a lot of people. So it's the same as OG Orcs, maybe like TSM, CLG. I suppose they have worse branding now. I think there were like some drama going on, especially on TSM, so maybe it's not as impactful, but I'm sure, when Perkz retired, for example, and then he came back and then he retired again, many people were, sad to see him go.
One thing that I do think about that whole thing where people make out that you're bad now, etc., is because it's so many years ago, I always used to forget this myself. So as I got older and I'm the super boomer in esports, what I had to learn was it feels like you don't really have all the same fans from like 2013. What happens is people come in and out of the game depending on what where they're at in their life. And as they get older, like it's when someone becomes 15 or 16, maybe they become an LEC fan, do it for a few years, then go and get a real job. So you almost have to think of it. I always say, like, if anything beyond like 2 or 3 years in the past, they might have heard of it, but they probably weren't there watching it. So I feel like you've oversold with the meme that you're whack and you have no mechanics, that you just have to play like fucking Sejuani or something. But when I think of the early Jankos, if people don't know, like, mechanics was your whole thing. You were the Lee Sin guy where if you locked it in, you were going to carry the game. If people don't know, you basically were like a Blabber or a Bo or one of these players that everyone, like El Yoya, that everyone's like loving it. Like, oh, if he gets on the like carry jungler or the gank jungler, he's going to take over the game. Weren't your mechanics fucking banging back in the day? Didn't you think you were really good?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was, of course, right. I think that mechanics was, like you said, one of the better things I had. I feel like my brain was, or my decision making wasn't as smart as it is now. I think, again, I mean, League evolved so much over the years. It's way more of a team game than it ever was. I mean, we can see that on Messiah right now, where all the teams are playing to bot lane because bot lane is powerful role, and then we see Ruler locking in Jinx or Aphelios, or Gumayusi locking in Jinx or Aphelios, and both of them carrying multiple games. Due to team fighting, right? And what's interesting about it is that there is different metas across League, but I feel like how Riot shifted the game is like very team-focused game. So it is a bit different. I think in 2013, 14, 15, you probably could have gotten away with like locking in a strong carry champion and 1v9ing, and that's what a lot of the people did back in the day. That's how they got known for, like Xpeke or I mean, even Rekkles, right? For example, when he had like a lot of pop-up games. And now there's still pop-up games, but you play to a certain win condition. You play around a person that has to carry, that is the strongest carry. You play utility mid laners, and I'm not sure if the meta is something right once. I'm not sure if they will keep it around, probably not. There was a huge patch literally yesterday, changing many items, changing the state of the game. But I mean, I've been a veteran player for a long time now, since I started 10 years ago. So for me, seeing the development of the game is also interesting, right? And trying to adapt to changes, trying to stay relevant. In the end, it is the same game, but it's not the same game from 10 years ago.
The only thing is, though, like you sort of touched on it earlier, partly because you're in G2 and it's sort of your streaming persona and you're a bit like self-deprecating, we say in English, with your jokes, that you make fun of yourself, like people know with all the plummy streams and stuff, right? Because you've done that, though, I agree with what you said before. When you're in G2 and you're at least top 2 or you're winning, it's sort of like, that's just fine, because it's like, it's good branding, you get to win anyway, so who really cares if someone thinks you missed a spear? But as you say, like, when you're not on that team anymore, I almost feel like some people do believe that you don't have any mechanics, or you can only play like the brain jungler. And it almost sounded in some interviews, I could never tell if you were totally serious, like if you actually believed it yourself. Because to me, it's like, I actually think you've shown it now in Heretics, when you're in a team where, we won't go into a lot of the details, but basically sometimes you had to be the guy who was going to have like agency on the map, had to be the guy who could carry sometimes. I feel like you've just shown you could do it all along. Like, were you overselling that just as a brand? Did you ever believe yourself, like, no, like, either it's not the way to play the game, or I'm just not a mechanical player anymore? Do you actually believe that?
I mean, I think it depends at what point of my career, because again, it was so long, right? So I think that I always believed in myself. I had confidence. I have confidence that I can play whatever I want. So I don't have this thing where I'm mental blocked to play a champion because I'm like scared to play it. I do, though, tend to lean towards the side of what is the highest percentage of winning the game, right? And in different teams is different things. So in G2, when we played in 2019-20, me playing utility helped the team a lot, because I was able to be kind of minimize my farm and maximize my map output so that my teams could play well. And then I had the best laners in Europe, right? I had Caps at his peak, same as Perkz and Mickey at his peak, and same as Wunder, right? Everyone was kind of playing very, very well back then. So I didn't really have to carry. I didn't really have to be the guy playing, I don't know, Lee Sin 1v9. I was still playing Lee Sin back then, but, you know, Sejuani or something more utility, like, I don't even remember what I was playing back then, but, you know, whatever the champions were meta, that allowed us to win, right? And then in 2020, we had to change our playstyle a little bit because carry junglers were on top. So when we went to a bootcamp in China, I was playing a lot of carry champions. That worked out decently at Worlds, right? We made semifinals. Then in 2021, in 2021, we didn't do well at all. I think we had different ideas on what is meta, what is good, what is strong. So the team overall didn't find a good cohesion, and we played without agreeing on like what we think is good. Like, some people thought this is good, some people thought this is good, and we had to choose one, but no one really, we were never on the same page, right? And in 2020, for the new generation with Flaka, Targamas, and BB, I was like playing both, I think. I was playing a little bit of carry, a little bit of tanks. And then now in Heretics, I was again torn between playing Sejuani, Wukong, and other champions because, again, I mean, that was kind of the meta, right? So I feel like I adapt to the meta mostly. Okay. Currently, I would love to play stuff like Kha'Zix, stuff like Viego, stuff like Kindred, the stuff that is being played at the Messiah, but I didn't make it to Messiah, so I cannot play that. I can only play it in solo queue. So, you know, I am looking forward to Summer Split, and I'm looking forward to seeing what is meta, because, I mean, if the nerfs don't happen, then champions like Kha'Zix will still be strong. And I miss playing these champions. I played them back in 2019-20 when they were meta, and again, I want to play them again. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But yes, I mean, I do have confidence. I think I still have good mechanics. Are they as top tier as like current Asian junglers? Probably not. I don't think I have like as good mechanics as, you know, Kanavi can have on some of his champions, or Honor can have on Lee Sin. But again, these players are known for specific champions. Like Honor can be known for Lee Sin, Kanavi can be known. I guess Kanavi is kind of known for just being the aggressive jungler that can play kind of anything as well. But I have the confidence of, you know, matching the Western junglers to the. My lowest expectations is being matched with the Western junglers, whoever it is, be it Elyoya, be it Hika, be it I don't know, Shio, whatever is like good, whoever is good now, right? I have expectations of being as good as them at least, right? So I mean, I still enjoy League, I still have fun playing, and whatever the meta will be, whatever I have to shift towards to make my teams win, I will do that.
One question, because in your career, you've had so many years and so many different teams and so much success. I can't go through it all, so we're going to pick out some interesting parts. One thing I did want to ask about was the infamous Season 5 ROCCAT, the one where it was some of the Polish guys went out, in came Nukeduck, and you had that different squad, basically. What I want to ask was just that, which is, if people don't know, Nukeduck, who also had a very long career, especially in the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 years, he actually has a very good reputation among other players in the league, because they say like he's a really smart mid laner, he understands like wave states and the map, and he's like, it's almost been implied to me, he's like good at like teaching his teammates and stuff. One of the weirdest things to me was when you played that year, you were both like individually good. You were a good jungler, he was a good mid laner, but it looked like, it almost reminds me of like Razorki Human. It looked like you like never connected or you weren't talking to each other. Can you explain what was the problem? Because you're both great players, right?
I mean, to be honest, like at this point, it's a long time ago, right? So I don't remember that well. But I think the big difference between Overpo and Nukeduck was that Overpo was like more vocal in the game, and I think Nukeduck wasn't as vocal. So then when I was taught the game, I was taught to like kind of, be strong mechanically and carry games, but it was helpful for me, for my teams to call me. Right now it's different, right? I can make my own decisions. I can help my teammates out quite a lot, and I'm the one calling them. But back then, when I started playing in 2014, it was very helpful. If my team needs help, they call me. I think Nukeduck was not as vocal player, so then our cohesion went down because other lanes were more communicative, and he was less communicative. And it's still the same in League. I still think that if you are like a very great player, you make your own decisions, and you like in a way don't trust your team, and you kind of trust yourself because you know what to do to win the game. But that's not how players play, right? You kind of want to trust your team. So let's say you have a top laner that is very vocal, you have a top laner that is talking a lot. Example would be Broken Blade. Broken Blade was a player, or is a player rather, I'm not sure it's still the same, right? As I'm not playing with him this year, but he tends to communicate a lot. He tends to communicate wave states. He tends to communicate map play in the mid game. He tends to communicate when he can move and he can't move, how is his lane. And then we had people like Flake Targa, which were very good individually as well, but they wouldn't be as talkative. They wouldn't communicate as many wave states, and they wouldn't have like nearly as many ideas around plays. Then naturally, last year, we became more of a top-centric team because, of course, we had BB Caps, which were arguably the two best laners, top mid in Europe, at least last year. And we had, them communicating a lot, or BB communicating a lot, when our bot lane was communicating less. And even though they were playing very good, and if they're still also good players, naturally, because they communicate less, the jungler will path to their lane a little bit less. Now, I think players have to do both. I think player has to be able to like take the dick, I don't know how to call it otherwise, and like play weak side, but also has to be able to be vocal and play the strong side if needed. And currently the meta, again, is heavy bot centric. So I assume that, players like Keria, Gumayusi are very vocal and are calling Owner. But I also assume Owner can make decision himself and be like, okay, this game we have Jinx and we have, Lulu. So I suppose laning phase is going to be hard, but if they go through laning phase into team fights, they'll probably carry the game. So I should, make sure they are happy in the game so that we win. I'm not sure if T1 is the best example because I think normally they play on bot lane, and Zeus is good enough to play 1v2 very often, but not against the best teams. And this is where they have to lock him in a tank when, he can play carry most of the time 1v2. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting subject, I suppose.
As you say, you were a different player, not only just in terms of what you picked and how you played, but even in terms of who you were in the team. Were you the one speaking? Were you the one being called? I have my spies in all teams, you have to understand. Sometimes it's a teammate, sometimes it's a coach, sometimes it's just somebody who works in the org, and I can get my info. I don't have to just go rely on interviews like fans. So one thing I heard, basically, is that from the end of like H2K through to when you're in G2, the people who are my spies in these orgs tell me you actually have the best communication of any player they've heard. They say in the game, like mixture of like taking info from other people, giving info, like saying what you're going to do. They say like you're one of the only players that isn't just like some people talk a lot, but they spam a lot of stuff. There's a lot of filler in there or a lot of information that's not useful. They said that your communication was some of the best. How did you develop this? Do you think, would you agree?
I mean, I would agree to an extent. So first of all, I cannot know how other players communicate in different teams because, I mean, I don't know how other junglers communicate, right? Because I'm not playing with other junglers. Then the second thing is, I still think sometimes I bring like useless comms. Useless comms are like, let's say, making fun of enemy players when you're winning, right? Like not like blaming them, not like being like, they're so boosted, but like just kind of like easing up the tension, which I still think is important to like make jokes, especially before the game, so that you ease up the stress, you ease up the tension. But at the same time, I still think sometimes I say useless things, but not very often. And besides that, I mean, I just feel like I try to listen to players, but it's not only that, it's again, knowing what the win condition is in the game, knowing what your draft's win condition is, and playing around that fact, right? And then as a jungler, I'm a player who is way less pressured in the early game as I'm playing 1v0, to be honest, right? There is not a lot of metas where like invading is super popular. Okay, there's some metas where you invade a lot. I mean, currently you can invade. They brought it back. They kind of removed it from the game. Now they brought it back. So the game starts level 1 for you. But there are some metas where like it was start level 3, level 4 for the jungler, because all you do is just farm camps, right? So you can make the plan for the early game. You can help your laners. You can coordinate them. You can talk to them. You can call slow pushes. You can make sure that people can move or ask if they can move at this wave to dive this tower or to do this. So it's just about kind of coordinating your team as a jungler, I think, especially in the early game, mid game. And then at some point, it falls more to the carries, or it falls to the people that are just stronger in the game. Or if you are the stronger, you can just keep doing it, right? But of course, I think it depends how communicative are people. I tend to talk a lot, so naturally in every team I was part in, I was like a big voice in my team. At least like since 2000, I would say 15, 16, I was a big voice in my team. Same goes to now. And I'm kind of used to it too, right? So I don't know how well would I do in a team where I don't talk. So for example, imagine you're a rookie going into a new team and you have someone, I guess Zika is a good example. You are a rookie going into a new team, and you have BB Caps and Hans.
Oh, by the way, just
Mickey.
if you're a fan, he just pronounces it weird. He means Yike, the player for G2 now.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
just because it sounded like you were saying the
okay.
Korean player Zika, but I'm just...
No, Yike.
Yeah, he means Yike. Okay,
so Yike goes to G2, right? And he plays with like very veteran players. So then I don't know how he communicates. He might have the best communications out of any other jungler in the game. I don't know that because I didn't play with him. I will have to ask Mickey. But anyway, maybe his role in the team is more of a, again, carry player, is more of like finding the opportunities, playing well in team fights, being at the correct position on the map, but it's not about coordinating lanes. It's not about, speaking about objectives and necessarily calling team map, right? So I think, I'm not sure how I would find myself in a position. Let's say I join a new team, Team X, and my job in the team was to like not talk a lot and kind of listen to my team and just like play my game. Because I'm so used to talking that it also makes me play better. But I also don't want to clutter comms. But I also shut up when other people talk. So yeah, it's communication in League of Legends is an interesting concept because the games are long, right? And there is at a different point in the game, your role is different because let's say you are a support and you are early game laning bot lane, you will naturally talk less than when you start to reset and you walk across the map. And same goes for a top laner, mid laner when they're just stuck on their island, or top lane stuck on their island in the early game. But then as soon as he can push out and the first towers are down, he has to communicate more, as he has to communicate wherever he can go on the mid wave, wherever he can retake vision, wherever he wants to TP flank or not. So I think communication in the game is very important actually, and communication is something that some teams may overlook, but I think having like a clear comms and not cluttering them too much, but also being precise and also not making it feel stressful is important. And I think it's something also we had last year, where I think in the G2 roster 2022, as much as we couldn't compete against the Western team on the highest level, right? We won a couple of BO1s, but we never really did anything in BO5s. And then at Worlds, we just like crashed and burned. But still, I feel like our comms were like super chill. It never really felt stressful in the game. It always felt like we are just kind of chilling. So that was a good comm. And I feel like in Heretics, the problem we had this year, for example, was sometimes I just felt like my players are very stressed, and it was a big topic, and we were trying to fix it, and I think it got better.
When you mentioned earlier about how your style evolved, partly because, first of all, you had better teammates. So if you have like the best laners, of course, you should probably focus on getting them even more ahead instead of trying the carry game yourself. But then also, as you say, like you just try to look for what gives you the best chance to win. So I actually feel like in general, this looks like what all great junglers do. Because even when I think of a lot of the other players, like if people don't know, like Smithy in North America, it's the same story. He used to be like a Lee Sin ganking jungler. And at the end, he was only the Sejuani, cover the map, like always be there for the counter gank, help his laner get ahead. And so one thing I thought was very interesting to ask about your style of play in the modern day is, if another thing my spies told me is This might sound funny because everyone sees you and Grabs are always bantering, and it always seems like you're like acting like the naughty school kid with your coaches, but your coaches secretly think you're the best, mate. Like they always tell me, like it's only when he left the team, basically, I realised that like the other jungler might be skilled or might play that champion, but he doesn't know like the map concepts that Jankos does. Like they basically told me that the reason why, like you had, I thought the most baller accomplishment for a jungler ever was when you won the back-to-back MVPs with different mid laners. You had Caps in the summer, and then the next one, Perkz had that one role swap back, and you won with Perkz.
Yeah, that being said, they were like arguably the best back then, though.
They are, but here's the thing, though.
Were, like, the best.
True, but they're also different types of mid laner. They're not like an identical player. True, so the thing I was trying to make the point of is, like, they told me even in these teams, even when it's like Caps who can do any outplay, even when it's Perkz who understands like map concept, they told me basically at times in the game you don't even have to com stuff. You would just sort of like the joke. Grab said it on a show. He said at times like Caps would be about to like int at like a brush or something, and it's like he said, but I already saw on the map like Jankos sort of like understood that might happen like 30 seconds earlier, and he already pathed, and he just sort of cover him just at the last second. But that isn't actually necessarily a called out play. That isn't something that Caps even knows what's going to happen there. What would you say to this concept? Because I think actually in the last few years, people have given you a lot of credit with the rookies and with the Heretics for like, it seems like you maybe have the best map understanding of the junglers.
I mean, I think it comes again with experience, and I think that map play is something you can learn, right? So I always think that like, if a player can play the game well with his hands, then map can be taught. But they also need to deal with stress well, and they also need to be able to deal with like pressure, and they also need to be kind of willing to take outplays, because I feel like there's some players that kind of tend to focus on like safe play, and I feel like that just prevents you from like being better quicker. I think like risking a lot of things in scrims, risking a lot of things in solo queue, just like playing maybe some would say too forward. In the end, if you learn from it, you will have like you will find the sweet spot at some point, right? So for me, yeah, I mean, I do read the map well because I've been playing the game for 10 years, right? For me, the hard part now is, first of all, to keep my hands fresh, to keep them like relevant, to play the new champions well, to play the old champions well, whatever is required of me. Second thing is relearning the game, because the game changes. So a concept that was true in 2019 is not necessarily the concept that is true now.
Right.
And I need to stay open-minded, because I think a lot of players that were a pro player for a couple of years and then stopped is also because they are stubborn and they don't really wanna change their opinions. And I think being able to like listen to your rookies, being able to take their feedback and kind of improve it, or just they have the better idea, listen to them, is also important, right? Because if you just refuse everything, and if you think, oh, this is how we should play the game, this is the best way of playing the game, but you don't think about others' ideas and you only kind of believe in yourself because you are an experienced player, that's also not something you should do, right? That makes you close-minded, that makes you, in the end, that makes you weak, that makes you bad over a period of time. So for me, it's not as much about like knowing the map. That can still get better, by the way. I'm not perfect. I still have so many things to learn, and I think that Peter, Dan, and also Chris, like our coaching staff currently, also helped me to develop more as a player. But yeah, again, at the same time, I need to be willing to change, right? I need to be willing to change things about myself, even though I'm experienced, even though I've been around for so long.
When I asked about Nukeduck and a player you'd played with where there was some issues maybe in the game, as far as I know, you know, as a personality, he seemed fine. It was just a playing style thing. There's a player I have to ask about, the notorious FORG1VEN, right? Because I've heard when you played with FORG1VEN, I will say, even though people know I was a fan of his style of play, I've always admitted his flaws. Like, spoiler, even when he was the best, he was kicked out of every team he ever played on. Like, and there's a reason why. I even tried to tell him, mate, eventually, you've got to look around in all these different rooms and realise I'm the only one in all these rooms. Like, it must be me that's causing some of the problems. I heard in your particular case, Jankos, you can maybe actually tell me specifically some of the issues, because in that team, look, plenty of people have been teammates of FORG1VEN, and, you know, maybe like they don't like his attitude or he demoralises them. But I've heard you and him actually had like the direct conflict, and basically I heard there was something like he made some like mean joke, like one day you decided to have like a few drinks and he made some like ridiculous comment about like Polish people being drunk all the time or something mad like that. And also there's the whole angle that, like, let's be real, he's an AD carry, and we all know if the AD carry dies, they blame the jungler. That's probably the most famous concept in League of Legends. So I've heard basically you're one of the reasons why he was kicked, essentially. Like he was basically, is it true? Were you sort of like, me or him, get the fuck out? Is it true?
I mean, I just think that it was very difficult, I guess, to play with him, because he had like a very weird idea of the game. So if he can 1v2, like 2v3, essentially, that's great for the team, and he will do that, and he will like push his limits, right? But if I wanna help him, he doesn't want that. But if I don't help him, he's mad about it.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So basically, it's like counter logic gaming.
Yes.
So it just doesn't make sense, right? So then, of course, conflict would arise. Personally, I don't remember the part where he called me alcoholic or Polish people being drunk. I don't remember that part.
Okay.
It probably happened, right? I mean, the thing is, there were like so many stories with him that I wouldn't remember all of them.
Okay.
I do remember a story where like I wanted to fist fight him because I was so tilted at him.
Okay.
But besides that, I think that it was also, you know, in my rookie days when I just started. So I would also deal with emotions in a very different way than I do as an adult person. I mean, back then I was like, what, 18, 19, right? So of course, back then when something triggered me and it just didn't make sense, then I would react differently than now. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like the biggest problem with him back then, at his peak, he was like very, very good, right? He was pushing his limits, he was pushing waves, he was outplaying people, he was a very strong laner. People were like afraid of him. But at the same time, for like his communication, for his team cohesion, for what he like, how he behaved when like things didn't go his way, when he got ganked, when he got behind, it was just like not playable. Like the games were just like so centered around him and wherever he can like 2v3 or not, that like the rest of the model is not playable. Like sure, if you get ahead topside enough to carry bot lane, if bot lane gets behind, that's great. But if not, then constantly every day in scrims, there's like a big problem of like having a tilted AD carry out of his mind because he got ganked or because he died. So it was just very hard to play. So this is why I think that most of the teams didn't want to continue with him, and most of the teams kind of just got rid of him at some point, just didn't continue the contract. And, you know, he tried to make his comeback a few years ago. I don't remember when was that, after I think his service in the army.
Yeah.
And then also, again, he had the same thing where the team didn't do well with him, and then they got replacement, and after the replacement suddenly they started winning, right? And this is where like his career just like disappeared and he stopped playing competitively. So I just feel like he was a good player, but he just had like a loose screw, if that makes sense. Like I don't want to offend him, because I think as a person he was a nice guy, and if you don't play League with him, he would be a nice friend. Yes. You know, he would be a good guy if you don't play League with him. But as soon as you're playing League with him, you just don't want to play League.
Yes. Well, one story maybe you can tell me about is because people have to know that dynamic to know how ridiculous it is that H2K then went to Worlds when he came back and actually managed to come top 4, because I've heard when he came back in summer, there was even some mad thing where the only way he was allowed to come back was he had to be like in a different room or like an apartment or something. He wasn't even with the other 4 players.
Yeah,
you would scrim and then you managed to qualify for Worlds, and somehow at Worlds, I was told, dude, even before the semi-final, like, mate, we could basically win Worlds, and this team's never played again with this 5 players next year. Like, it's just a one-off last thing, sort of. So give me that story, because if a fan doesn't know it, they would always think if you make like a big placing, everyone must like get along, or it must be like, sounds like a very weird setup. It sounds like one of the weirdest setups ever. The player's not even in the room.
Yeah, I mean, I think basically I was very like convinced that I want to play with a different AD carry back then, right? I wanted to like stick with Freeze, but the problem is that Freeze had issues with hand. Yes. So he kind of performed very poorly as well. And our org decided that it was mainly, I think, H2K's decision that like the only way we make it to Worlds is with FORG1VEN, because he can actually like play better than Freeze right now. So then they brought back FORG1VEN, but yeah, the idea was he plays from a different room in a different apartment. Basically in a different apartment. So sure. He was playing from a different apartment. So then when we reviewed the games, he was like not part of it. We would just review as 4 people. We would try to learn concepts as 4 people. And we kind of expected him to like just auto-attack. And that's good, because he was good at auto-attacking. He was good at like, you know, sidestepping, at maximizing damage output. And then wherever he would die or not, I mean, that was just like a different story. But the deal was that he wouldn't like make comments in game as much. And, you know, the reviews would be without him. So then he had time to like chill out, right? And then somehow we made it to Worlds. And then I think we went like 1-3 or something. I don't remember like the first week of Worlds. I think it was 4 teams or so, but I just remember we lost like most of the games, and then we hated each other. Like, not like all of us hated each other, but like the atmosphere in the team was terrible. Like it was just awful. And then somehow we, you know, made quarters, and then in quarters we had one of the worst teams at Worlds making quarters. So we got lucky, and then we made semis. That being said, that team did beat, I think, G2 Esports back then, right?
Yeah.
Which were the strongest European team. So it's not like they were like bad in BO1, but like I couldn't imagine ourselves losing to them. So then we 3-0'd them, and then we made semis, and then the story it was the first 0-3 in my professional career at the international stage. There were like a couple of 0-3s after,
sure.
but that was the first 0-3. And then we went home, and then everyone knew we are not gonna continue with the same team. Then we changed the team in 2017. That also didn't work out. I didn't make it to Worlds. G2 in 2018 again made it to Worlds. 19, 20 made it to Worlds. 21 didn't. 22 did. 23 we will see. I hope so. Worlds are in Korea. I really want to go to Worlds. I think Worlds are like the most fun time. I think MSI right now is comparable because this MSI system was so much more interesting than last year's, and we had more teams and we had multiple BO5s across regions. Well, I guess we didn't really have like EU versus NA, but let's be honest, not the highest level of play. It is interesting from like Western point of view. I would also like to see Cloud9 facing G2, Golden Guardians playing as Mad Lions. I think that'll be very, very interesting. I think we would fuck them, but I mean that's a different story. We never saw it. So I am very much looking forward. I'm hoping that we can still make it. We did some roster changes that are not announced yet, but I mean, it was announced that, some at least one player is departing from Heretics. So I think Worlds are like at a time where you have the most time to like improve as well, because right after summer split ends, you can go to Korea for a bootcamp, and Worlds are in Korea. So when the bootcamp happens, all the teams are there, so you can scrim all the teams that are good. You can see Chinese teams, you can see Korean teams. Last year, Worlds were in America, so there was no Korean bootcamp for us. We kind of stayed in Europe, I think, playing a little bit, and then we went to Korea. Then we went to USA, I mean. Now, Worlds are in Korea, and I think Western teams improve most when the Worlds are in either China or Korea, because you can go there instantly. There is no traveling between, let's say, bootcamp and Worlds, because they are already there, and you instantly play the best solo queue, and you instantly play you have the most time, and you play against all the Asian teams. And you don't have to play JDG and T1 to get better. You can play like top 3, top 4 teams, and they are still very solid. They have still similar concepts. They are still very good players. They have still you still play like solo queue on very low ping. You still play scrims on very low ping. So I feel like this is probably the year where it's gonna be super interesting. It's gonna be super entertaining. And it would be a shame to miss it, So I really want to be part of it. I don't know if I can. It's going to be a tough one. We need to we need to make it to BO5 in summer split, and then we have to be top 4 in the championship split to make it. It's possible. We are going to try our best. But yeah, looking forward to Worlds. I think that G2 especially can do a lot of damage to Western teams. I know that they didn't look the best against the strongest competition, but they were also the only ones that like won 2 games of Eastern teams. So I think that with some learning curve, they can do damage, and I'm looking forward to Worlds. That was a bit off topic.
It's all good. When you mentioned that 0-3 against Samsung, right? People need to remember this isn't the year Samsung won. That was the next year, but it was the one where they made the finals and they had the 5 games against T1, and it was like epic, right? Even though that was 3-0, though, Jankos, I have a question about this series, because I remember game 1 of this series, you played Olaf, and dude, you got like 7 kills or something, man. You were like carrying the early game, but the problem with your team obviously had issues with like mid-game and shot call and stuff. In the second game, I remember it was really close for a while. Like, even though this was a 3-0, I wondered from your personal perspective, like, were you just a different player back then? Like the Jankos, I feel like now, if a Jankos was on an Olaf now and he got like 7 or 8 kills, you would get a laner ahead, you would carry the game. Do you remember what it was like? Do you remember what went wrong for you?
I mean, I think what mostly went wrong is that the map play was so much better, and how they played with control was different. I think that, of course, a team right now from 2023 would beat that team in 2015. We didn't have to, like, world champions back then were very good at the game. I mean, the concept of the game was different. Junglers had words, so, like, again, the game worked much, much different. But just overall, I would say that their map play was so much more solid. Like they understood better how to put vision, how to make their laners safe, how to get their push outs, how to secure an objective, how to group for it. And sure, you could have kills, but it wasn't as simple to like carry the game, because it's not like you just go and fist fight each other who is better, right? It's more about concept, it's more about map play. And this is something that back then Western teams did worse. And we still do worse, actually. It's still the same thing where side laning is better for Eastern teams. And I think the best side lane team from Europe was G2 in 2019, where we were actually better at side laning, and we were beating Eastern teams with side lanes. We didn't have lead every game. We actually often started from behind, but then when mid game came through, and we had, you know, Perkz and caps, Perkz and sometimes Wunder, sometimes caps on side lanes, we would play very, very well, and we had a good understanding of it, so then we would beat the Eastern teams. Now the problem is that they have, again, very solid setups and good side lane understanding, I feel like better than Western teams. So this is how they tend to snowball the game and get their leads. And then there's also team fights where, you know, Nash turns or Drake turns. But again, I think the only team that kind of could compete with them at this was G2, where they had some decent Nash turns. They had also some bad ones where they just insta-lost the game. But they had some decent Nash turns, and they are not afraid to take those risks. And this is why I think this is what other Western teams can lack, that kind of willing to take the risk to lose the game instantly. And if it happens, sucks. You know, it just sucks, blows. You just fucking lost the game, and it's a shame, but this is the only way you can learn. This is the only way you can compete long-term against Eastern teams, because if you never take risks and no one is challenging you, let's say you're at Cloud9 and you are destroying everyone in NA, no one is challenging you, and then you go and you face GNG, and then you just get like 3-0, and you just get destroyed. And like, there is just no competition. Like, there's no game where you are competitive. You are just getting spanked. You are just getting made fun of. So, and G2 was very, very competitive, I think, in both the series against BLG, and I think in GNG, some games they're competitive too, because they're willing to take those risks, and because they have good laners to, and good junglers who, like, all of them, good individual players who can, like, kind of make the game playable. You also need, I guess, good enough players to make the game playable. If you are getting destroyed during the laning phase, there's like nothing to play for. But if you can make the laning phase somewhat relevant, you lose one lane, you win the other. The last one is even. You get to play the game, you get to play the map, and you actually play the map, right? You are not afraid of them, to take the fights, to bait them, to kind of beat them on their own game. I think many analysts have opinions that West should just cheese and should like come out with shots like out of the picture and have like original picks. I think that's great to do for a game, but I don't think there is like a strat where you can like 3-0 on an Asian team by cheesing every game and playing original champions, because the idea of these cheese champions is that they are trash. They are not good. That's why they are not being played. So sure, maybe you can find a champion that is very out of the meta and very OP, but try to find them like multiple times over multiple BO5s so that you can like keep cheesing and winning, right? I still think you need to be solid enough team to be good enough at you know, the same concepts of the game to beat Eastern teams. So I think that you know, you need to be willing to take risks, and you need to be willing to learn over time. And I feel like Worlds will be the best, again, case of having like the most time to do that. Are Eastern teams, I mean, are Western teams gonna do better? I mean, not every team. Most of them are gonna just crash and burn, but I think some teams can do damage. Maybe like, again, Cloud9, maybe G2, maybe Mad, maybe Heretics. Who knows, right? We will see who is good in a couple of months.
In this H2K period, when H2K was still a good team or a relevant team, obviously the main rival for you, people would have said, would have been Trick, who was on G2, who was winning all the championships. He got the MVPs as well. I have a question for you, and this is no disrespect to Trick. Was Jankos actually better than Trick, or was Trick better than Jankos back then? What's your opinion? Because obviously it's about what team you're on and things like that, right?
I mean, I think he was smarter than me, but I was like better when I had my champions. That's basically how I saw it. I think he was like, back then, I think he was better at Graves than me, but I played better like other champions. But I mean, I like Lee Sin, for example, but I think he was smarter. So I had like to learn a lot as well, right? When I joined G2 in 2018, Perkz brought some concepts to me that were like not as familiar, and this is where I think I improved quite a lot. And this is like 2018 G2 is where my map play became like good, because I was working with Perkz, and I think he was very smart, and apparently he learned from Mitty and Trick, and I don't know where they got their concepts from, but basically this is where I became smarter and I became a good map player. Before that, I wasn't like as smart around the map, right? I was just kind of, I had my own ideas, but not always I would be able to like be good at them or like be smart. And 2018 were like the big step. So I think when Trick was winning championships, it was for a reason. I think he was very, very good back then, and I think he was very smart. I think he was by far the smartest jungler in Europe. So this is why he was winning. It made sense, you know.
Right. Since obviously 2018 was when you joined G2, the obvious question I have, just because I remember what it was like back then, everyone now thinks everyone in G2 is all best friends, right? People might know this. You guys, you and Perkz, not only on the broadcast, were hilarious and like always bantering each other, and they used to purposely put you on the analyst desk together for that reason. But also, like, even on Twitter, you were like, this is before G2 brand even did this. You were the original shit talkers. You were always DMing back, like fucking doing the replies and trying to say, you're going to lose this game, I'm going to lose this game. How was it at all weird when you joined up as teammates? Wasn't it sort of like, hey, I want to beat you, I'll fuck you, or whatever? How did you get together?
I think we were like, we would banter each other, but we didn't have like hard feelings behind it. So we both respect each other as players, right? And I think the banter already started back in 2000. I think it was 16 when I met Perkz in a bar, and he was like this very cocky kid. And I don't remember what the conversation was about, and I don't remember where we met and why did we even talk to each other, but like I just remember that he was very, very cocky. That's all I remember, this smack mid laner's face. So this is where the banter kind of started, and they just kept going, right? And then when we joined the team together, I think we both respected each other, right? So, you know, we started playing together, and I think it worked out well. So I don't remember what was the reason that Trig left. I don't remember if he was joining military or what was the reason they like. I think many players left G2.
I think he went back to LCK. I think he actually went and played in LCK for a year or something. So maybe he wanted to go back to Korea, you know.
So maybe he just wanted to go back to Korea, and then, you know, expect same thing, and then Trig and Sven left, so they had like only Perkz left, right? And he kind of built the roster around himself, and he got me, he got Wunder, and then he I don't know what did, right? And as much as we struggled in summer split in Europe back then, I think spring went well. We were top 2, and then we made it to Worlds. We beat RNG. We were in semifinals too. Then got 3-0 by IG, same as Fnatic that year. So, but that was kind of when the Western League of Legends was at its peak, right?
Yes.
2018, 19, 20 was where we had Fnatic, we had G2 competing with Eastern teams and being able to stay relevant. I think another time was, I don't remember that because I was not as relevant. I was playing in like, again, H2K and ROCCAT where we didn't really make it to Worlds, but I someone told me that I think was it 15 or 16 or not really 16, but maybe 17? Maybe 17, 15, where Western teams was also like not doing too bad.
It was 2015 was when Fnatic and OG made semis.
Yeah, okay, so maybe that year, right? Was like when we were like kind of relevant. And now we had a 2-year break, I think. I would say 2021 and 2022. Yep. No teams was able to compete. The Rogue last year made quarters, but no one really believed they could. I mean, I kind of believed in them actually back then. I felt like their playstyle made sense against Eastern teams, but then they just got like destroyed in BO5. But at least they made it there, right? And 2021, when we didn't make it towards G2, I don't even remember there's any team that made quarters. Like
they did. Mad Lions and Cloud9 did, but like they just got wrecked.
Oh, yeah, and they got 3-0 as well, right?
Yeah.
So this is why, I mean, we didn't have any teams in semis for a while now. The last time was, I guess, last year MSI, but making semis back then was like a given because it was only like two Korean, like one Korean team, one Chinese team. Yep. So making it semis for us and Evil Geniuses in a way like was the minimum.
Yes.
And I feel like this year can be different. I feel like this year can again bring back some hope at Worlds. I think maybe, hopefully, we'll be able to compete a little bit better. I'm not saying win, but I'm saying at least make semis in a BO5, beat Asian team, Western team, beating Eastern team, hopefully. We will see who is going to be. We will see if it's possible. But I think it should be more possible. Hopefully, like after this two-year period where we were not very good, and the 3-year period where we were able to compete, we can go back to the period where, again, we can actually compete against them.
When I ask you about the Season 8 Worlds and that match against RNG, it's funny because the rest of the career when it became the super team was like they always lose to the LPL team. But the joke here is that actual LPL team was themselves trying to be like the greatest team ever. They'd won MSI, they won the LPL splits. They were supposed to win this Worlds, and you guys obviously upset them in the quarters, right? In that match, not only did they have Uzi Eyes, people forget Carson was their jungler. He's another long-term jungler who's had a lot of success. Did that series change something for you to win like a best of 5 against a top team? He's in theory the number 1 team in the world. Did it change your career?
I'm not sure, right? I mean, maybe it did, but it didn't. I mean, back then I was just very happy that we made it, that we won in Busan, right? That was my second Korean bootcamp and tournament in Korea as well, and our first tournament in Korea, and I was just very happy to like win. I didn't really care about who we play because I didn't watch like as much RNG back then, so I didn't understand, if that makes sense, how strong they can be. So then I just kind of played the game, right, and we won, and I was very, very happy. I remember I was like really high on sugar and coffee. I was like drinking so much coffee and eating like cakes before that series. But yeah, I was very, very happy that we won. And did it change my life? I mean, it was the moment where like I was just like proud to like be a pro player, to like be the Western hope, right? Because we were like, oh, they are gonna for sure lose. And then we saw us winning, and then Fnatic won as well. And then Fnatic was meeting Cloud9 in semifinals, so they had like the freest final ever. And then we were there as well, playing against IG. And IG already lost in group stage, I think, one time to Fnatic. So people actually expected us, okay, they beat RNG, the best team from China. So now surely they will beat IG, and we have like Europe against Europe in the final. And finally, like the West can rise. And then, you know, everyone just got 3-0.
I have a question about that match, though, except here's the thing. I'm not even going to flame you, because my question in the IG one is this. Everyone knows the reason why IG, and even maybe this G2 team did well, is because it was a solo lane. The meta switched for Worlds. It was all about solo lane strength. And it was even about things like, do you have super carries who could like flex the picks between top and mid, like Wondering Perkz could and the Shy and Rookie could. But as a result, logically, if you're the jungler, if you play a series like that, where Perkz and Wonder will even admit it, Shy and Rookie absolutely smashed them. Obviously, they smashed everyone in these matches. If you're the jungler, you can't really do anything if both your lanes just get destroyed, right? There's not really much you can do in that game.
I mean, I think that like there's like part of it is true, but I also think the other part is that because Ning was playing, back then in this meta, when your soul lanes were smashing, you had to play super hyper aggressive junglers to either invade or to just gank level 2, level 3, right, to make them ahead. And I think Ning was actually good at that. It wasn't like a hard thing to do to like pick Camille and go mid level 2, but it was the thing, right? And I think Fnatic, Cloud9 didn't actually play these junglers, and we did. We played stuff like Camille and Zhao Listen, but not to like the as high level as they did, right? So then still, we were choosing to pick these champions, and we were actually getting ahead in some games, like especially in game 3 we got ahead because of our Camille LeBlanc from Perkz and me, but we weren't able to like execute on it good enough to win these games, right? But I think that the big question there was, you know, if wherever you are playing the same champions, and yeah, again, if you can flex these champions between solo lanes, and if they can dominate their lanes, and if the jungler can support them to dominate these lanes. And the meta, I think, back then started completely different. I think the beginning of the tournament was like playing Skarner, I think, or something, and just like not doing anything. And then the meta just completely shifted into like only aggressive, only level 2 gank, level 3 gank, fist fight, crab fight level 2, because there was, I think, back then double crab like 2 minutes. So if you got like double crab, it was like a whole camp. Now crab doesn't give XP, back then you give like a whole camp of XP, but you would like one-shot it. So it was like perma fight. Camille E would stun camps back then as well. So yeah, it was fun. It was definitely fun. I mean, when I reminisce, when I think back about my career, there were definitely a lot of fun moments, and I think this was, of course, a very fun Worlds, and you know, winning against RNG was super fun, super entertaining.
Where I come from in England, people will often say, oh yeah, you and whose army? Well, I'll tell you what, I've got my own army backing me up. They're called the Skrilluminati. Thank you to Ahmed Haju, Joseph Adcock, Matt Pugnaccio-Racula, Theogony, Animosity, Bot Pounder 420, Jensen Gore, Tobias Bernasconi, Tosh, Toucan, and as always, you know it, a special thanks goes out to my boy Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? You want teasers, find out who's in the upcoming interviews? Do you want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Maybe you want to be part of those long discussions where we talk about anything and everything in esports. Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and enlist today in the Skrilluminati via the Patreon link in the box below.